Foreign Affairs. Israel seeks missiles, artillery from U.S. following Hamas attack. The country's urgent requests will test America's industrial base and Congress. Israel's appeal for more arms came into focus in a briefing for congressional leaders and the heads of security-focused committees on the surprise attacks by Hamas. Safrir Abayof/AP. By Connor O'Brien, Joe Gould, and Paul McCleary. October 9, 2023, 10:53 a.m. EDT. The American effort to supply Israel with new military assistance took a step forward overnight, as Biden administration officials briefed Congress on weapons the ally is urgently seeking from the United States. Israel's appeal for more arms came into focus in a briefing for congressional leaders and the heads of security-focused committees on the surprise attacks by Hamas, according to two people familiar with the meeting. During the unclassified call, officials told lawmakers that America's closest ally in the Middle East urgently needs precision-guided munitions and more interceptors for the Iron Dome air defense system. One of the people familiar with the call said Israel is also seeking more U.S.-made small-diameter bombs. The request for emergency military aid promises to test the capabilities of the House and Senate at a moment of extraordinary political instability in Washington, following the ouster of Representative Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker, and strained supply chains for arms manufacturers as a result of the war in Ukraine. In addition to the briefing on Sunday night, lawmakers are likely to receive a classified briefing this week, according to the second person familiar with the call. Democrats and Republicans closed ranks in support of Israel over the weekend as the attacks from Gaza unfolded. President Joe Biden and lawmakers in both parties have pledged to swiftly grant Israel what it needs following the unprecedented attack. While it's possible that some weapons may be delivered quickly using existing authorities, Congress will likely need to appropriate more money eventually. Those efforts will be affected by how the leadership drama in the House plays out in the coming days. Following the briefing, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the upper chamber stands ready to deliver on additional needs. "I asked the representatives of our Defense Department if they are giving Israel everything they need, and I was heartened that they said yes and that they are surging support," Schumer said in a statement. "I asked them if they have denied any requests that Israel has made, and they said no." Senate Foreign Relations Chair Ben Cardin, DMD, on Saturday pledged to introduce legislation to restock the interceptors fired by the Iron Dome systems. The Senate is out this week and returns the week after. Biden has not yet sought supplemental funding, though a request could come shortly, and many lawmakers are signaling emergency funding should be quickly approved if needed. The first person said Pentagon and State Department officials who briefed lawmakers said they have all the legal authorities they need right now to assist Israel, though they did not specify what those are. Those efforts may already be underway. The White House said in a statement following a phone call between Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday that more assistance for Israel's military is now on its way to Israel, with more to follow over the coming days. Officials told lawmakers that the administration is weighing the use of some portion of the $100 million of presidential drawdown authority to send weapons from U.S. military stockpiles, according to the second person familiar with the call. Drawing from existing U.S. stockpiles would undoubtedly place more stress on both the Pentagon and the defense industry, which have been hard-pressed to issue new contracts and increase production of certain munitions already sent to Ukraine. The needs of the Israelis and Ukrainians are different in some key respects. Israel will rely heavily on precision air-to-ground munitions fired from F-16 and F-35 fighter jets and Apache helicopters, none of which is in the Ukrainian arsenal. The issue of 155mm artillery shells, which both countries rely on heavily, will likely loom large, however. Drawdown authority is one of the mechanisms the administration has tapped to send arms to Ukraine, and administration officials stress the importance of Congress replenishing stockpiles of weapons that have been in high demand, which would take separate appropriations. U.S. lawmakers have been quick to promise more aid to Israel, but because those pledges come at a time of deep political dysfunction in Washington, it's raised questions over how quickly the money can start flowing. The House, for example, cannot pass legislation until it elects a speaker to replace Representative Kevin McCarthy, R. California, who was ousted last week. The crisis and the inability of the House to act until it picks a new speaker has even fueled some calls to reinstate McCarthy. The Senate is also facing a logjam of diplomatic and military personnel, and there's a renewed push to quickly get top officials on the job to deal with the emerging Middle East crisis. The list includes Jack Lew to be ambassador to Israel along with several other envoys to the region. Senator Tommy Tuberville, R. is also blockading hundreds of senior military promotions over Pentagon abortion policies. The more than 300 nominees held up include several officers who would be tasked with commanding U.S. forces in the Middle East. The first person familiar with the call noted that several senators voiced concerns about the nominee blockade and its operational impact during the briefing. But Tuberville said this weekend he isn't backing off. Biden says military assistance is on its way to Israel. Israel has asked for additional assistance, according to Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken. Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken said Israel had asked for some specific additional assistance from the United States, which supplies $3 billion in military aid to Israel every year. Credit: Hyun Jong for The New York Times. By Michael D. Shear. 1. October 8, 2023. The United States is working to fulfill several specific requests from Israel for military assistance in the wake of the attack by Hamas on Saturday, Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken said on NBC's Meet the Press program on Sunday morning. Mr. Blinken said that the Israeli government had asked for some specific additional assistance as the country gears up for what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned will likely be a prolonged conflict. Mr. Blinken declined to provide additional details about specific weapons systems that might be provided to Israel in the near future. White House officials said President Biden told Mr. Netanyahu in a call on Sunday that military assistance is on its way to Israel and more will follow in the days ahead. In the latest call between the two leaders, Mr. Biden discussed the taking of hostages by Hamas terrorists, including entire families, the elderly, and young children, according to a readout of the call by the White House. The president emphasized that there is no justification whatsoever for terrorism, and all countries must stand united in the face of such brutal atrocities, according to the White House. The United States already provides Israel more than $3 billion in military assistance every year, and Mr. Blinken said that much of the equipment from that funding is already in the pipeline to be sent to Israel. There are also 6 pre-positioned stockpiles of American ammunition and arms in locations throughout Israel, according to military officials, that are designated for use by Israel in case of an emergency or for a military operation in the area by the United States. The 6 stockpiles include a total of about $2 billion in material, and both countries would have to sign off on their use. Officials for the National Security Council declined to say whether the use of those stockpiles is under consideration. In the longer term, American lawmakers on both sides of the aisle said Sunday that they hoped Republicans could resolve their leadership struggle and select a House Speaker so that Congress can act on further funding for Israel if needed. Given the situation in the Middle East with one of our closest allies in the world, it is critical that we bring this to a close expeditiously, Representative Mike Lawler, Republican of New York, said on CNN's State of the Union program. Michael D. Shear is a White House correspondent for The New York Times, covering President Biden and his administration. He has reported on politics for more than 30 years. More about Michael D. Shear.